friends, it's Taylor from Doomed to Fail. Today we are re-releasing episode 6, part 1 on Drew Peterson. So you might confuse this Peterson with other men whose last name is Peterson who have murdered their wives. And this one is pretty wild. I wanted to just mention how we advocate again for not killing your spouse. You can just leave. And also, we are a podcast where we do try to think about red flags. And a red flag here is definitely if your spouse or your future spouse has several missing spouses. Something is wrong and you should get out of there as soon as possible. There are dozens of other fish in the sea. So enjoy this story, and I will see you on the other side.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
And we are recording. Okay. Welcome to Doomed to Fail, the podcast where I consistently test Taylor's patience with me. I'm joined here by my co-host, Taylor. Hi, Taylor. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. And I got to put a note on how I tested your patience. We usually record these at 10 a.m. on Saturdays, Central Time.
Mm-hmm.
The last 2 weeks, I've had to push it back multiple times. And Taylor's been very, very accommodating. And I want to thank her and her family for being okay with that.
You're welcome. Mostly my family. Thank you, Juan Carlos, for not murdering me. Yeah.
Thank you, Juan. So let's go ahead and start things off. Taylor, I see you have a lovely new tattoo. Do you want to talk about it?
Oh, sure. I just got a new tattoo. It's a scorpion. It was hand poked today. There's a woman here in Joshua Tree named Taylor, and her name's Taylor also. She has a place called Love Always Tattoo Shop, and this is my second thing from her. I also got this dinosaur from her as well.
Is hand poked a
No one
lot
can
more
see.
painful? Because I assume that it's more nuanced in detail. Is it more painful than normal?
No, and I think well, this is like just an outline, like, intentionally, like a simple outline. I think the worst thing is the shading of a tattoo. That's the part that hurts the most, and there isn't any shading in this. So
Nice. It looks
Sorry.
awesome. It looks very, very
Yeah.
cool.
Thanks. And my maiden name is Styric, and a styric is a little tiny scorpion. So
Like it's a species of a scorpion, right? Okay.
hmm
Sweet. Very
Yeah.
cool. Did not know that. When you told me that earlier this week, I learned something new. Did not know that was a thing.
Who would know that? Yeah.
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 Well, so let's go ahead and kick things off by figuring out what we're going to be drinking today. Taylor, do you want to maybe let us know what yours is, and I'll let you know what mine is?
Yes. So for mine is going to be a non-alcoholic drink, but it's going to be like a nice, like spiced, like chai Indian style tea. So if you wanted to, pour yourself some tea, brew some things, we're going to go to India for my portion today. But also physically, I'm not drinking tea because tea gives me a headache and whatever. I'm drinking champagne, because it's our anniversary.
It is.
Cheers.
It is.
It's a totally normal thing to have a friend-iversary with someone, and it's exciting because it's our 10-year friend-iversary.
It's a big
So
one.
that's pretty cool. We didn't even know what podcasts were 10 years ago, and here we are. So
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. Taylor and I met 10 years ago at our last company in LA. We started on the first day, part of the same cohort, and yeah, been
yeah,
homies ever since.
ever
Um,
since.
So my drink is Lafroig 10. It is Scotch. And the reason I have this, because I'm actually drinking it while I'm doing
Yeah,
this,
you're holding it very aggressively.
which which usually I don't drink and do these, but I'm going to do it this time. And the reason I picked Scotch is because to me, Scotch is a celebratory drink. And so I'm celebrating one thing that's personal and then one thing that's related to our story. The personal side of it is being in Austin, and with the ice storm that hit, I'm one of the 30% of Austinites that was without power for about 3 or 4 days. And I just got it back today, and I was just absolutely elated to get it back. As it relates to our story, again, I'm celebrating that I'm not this guy that we're going to talk about. He is so awful. He's one of the worst people
That's great.
I've ever read about and researched. And I just can't. I'm so thrilled that I'm just not him. So
Awesome. Great. I don't even know who it is yet, but I'm also thrilled that you're not him because that sounds bad.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and
I heard it open. That was nice.
yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pour a little, a finger or two of scotch here in this plastic cup.
It's also a very bright side of you to be like, I'm grateful that my um lights are back and not like fuck the Texas power grid. So I appreciate you half full with that one.
Yeah, yeah, it's been awful, and it's funny because today it's 60 degrees here,
Hmm.
so you didn't wake up just shaking in your bed, and the night 2 nights before was in the 30s, and I was like,
Oh
I
my
really could
God.
have used power those nights. I really could have instead of tonight, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm
You
thankful it's
survived.
here, and I'm off to
Yeah,
Florida tomorrow, so all good things.
great.
So let's go ahead and dive into what my topic is. So I'm going to be discussing Drew Peterson. You know who Drew Peterson is, right, Taylor?
Yes.
It's part of the Peterson men murdering wives era of
Yes.
American true crime.
Yes. But not related to Petersons, but like they were just Petersons.
Totally unrelated, but I feel like I wasn't super into true crime when this went down with Drew, so I think I personally confused the two together, and I just didn't really care.
Hmm.
Maybe it was just like saturation of people killing their spouses, and I just didn't really pay
Yeah.
attention to it at the time. And also, there wasn't much to the story, as we're gonna see. I mean, the outline is extensive, so there's a lot to talk about, but
Yeah.
I'll explain why there wasn't all that much to the story when this actually first came out. So to start things off, I'm gonna say, I guess what might be a controversial opinion.
Okay.
I'm not anti-police personally.
Totally. Okay.
So I have not had many negative interactions with police, and I'm totally aware that that's not everyone's experience. I see the news, I pay attention to what's going on. I understand that these people have impossible jobs, very little salary, incredibly high stakes. It's kind of like teachers and
Hmm.
professions like that, where it's kind of like a thankless job, and your ability to screw up is incredibly high. I have that framing in my mind, and I'm totally aware that there's like really shitty versions of these people that are out there. But this is a
Hmm.
general thing. I'm just gonna start at the top that I'm not anti-cop. I'm prefacing that because I also think there's another category that I don't know if anybody's ever coined before that I just thought of when I was drafting this outline. You tell me if you've ever heard of this. Cop bro. Is that a thing?
Oh, no, but I know exactly who you're talking about when
It's
you say that.
the George Zimmerman
Hmm.
types that relish power
Hmm.
without the ability to harness it and use it
Hmm.
productively and constructively.
Hmm.
So I'm coining the phrase. If it hasn't been done before, if it has, let me know and I'll give you credit somewhere in the notes. But Cop
Stop
Bro is a
your
thing.
patent.
And
Yeah,
yeah, and we are talking about Cop Bro today because Drew Peterson, his entire career was in law enforcement. And so
totally.
everything I said about police, take that out of the equation here because that is not who we're talking about here. So
Totally. Oh, wait, can I say something real fast?
please.
Did you watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Yeah.
I loved how they handled everything post COVID, post, you know, George Floyd and all of these terrible things happening with the police. I don't know if you got that far in the series, but they
Tell me.
handled it
I didn't
really,
see
really
it.
well.
Yeah.
So, spoiler alert, Rosa, one of the cops, she ends up leaving because she doesn't want to be associated with the police force anymore. And so they talk about it and like they really like talk about her decision and how hard it was for her because she loved being a police officer, but she just didn't agree with the way that, America was going with their police force and all these things. And I don't know, they really like they wrapped up the series really beautifully in a time when it was like a real hard anti-cop time.
Rosa
So,
was a character, so the character was wanted to exit the show.
yeah. No, yeah, yeah. The character, she's still in the show. It's only the last season that this happens, but she quits working in the police department and talks a lot about how like as like Latino woman, she can't continue to work for the police force. It was interesting. I think they
Yeah,
did a good job. They didn't ignore it.
that's awesome. That's very
Yeah.
cool. So yeah, like I said, we're gonna be discussing Drew Peterson today. I'll start by saying, if you're a woman, you do not want to be married to Drew. He is a unique brand of sociopath, and we're gonna get into a bit of his background here. So, like I said earlier, Drew's background is entirely in law enforcement. He had a 30-year career as a police officer and later a sergeant in a suburb of Chicago called Bolingbrook.
Hmm.
I looked this town up. It looks idyllic, not celebration idyllic. It looks sensible idyllic. Like it's a normal small town vibe.
I'm from Libertyville, which is a very similar town in of a suburb of Chicago. Yes.
You're from a suburb of Chicago?
I'm from Libertyville, Illinois. I
I
lived there
thought,
till I was 13, then I moved to Las Vegas.
yeah, I was gonna say, I thought you were always from Las Vegas. 10 years, that little nugget of Taylor trivia comes out.
There's still so much to learn.
So much to learn. And I found another interesting thing about Bolingbrook was that the income level was high. It was somewhere around 107,000. I didn't write it down in the outline, but it was above the national average. So we're talking about a relatively sleepy town, despite the fact that it's in a Chicago suburb. So just like frame that as like that's where this guy is trying to enforce the law. There's not much going on, and this is me just projecting. If I was him, I'd be bored out of my mind. Maybe like the way he turned into a sociopath was he just like, I'm so tired of writing tickets for like parallel
hmm
parking in the wrong spot, and then he went
hmm
down this horrible rabbit hole that he ended up down.
hmm
So he retired in 2007 and was given a pretty nice pension of about $67,000 or so a year, which is awesome.
Great.
Yeah, free money. So that's his professional background. Not much more detail we need to go into there. Apparently, he wasn't a terrible cop. He did have actually one and only one misconduct allegation, and that was only for running police searches for fun rather than for work reasons. And then later on, somebody else said, we all do that. We all like, if we're trying to see what our in-laws are up to, we'll run background. Like, it was a common
Oh,
thing.
sure. Okay. Not like going into someone's house and being like, I'm gonna go through your drawers. So being like, I'm gonna look up on the computer if you have any felonies.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Sure. Like I was talking to someone today about how if you give me your address, I'm gonna Zillow your house, like 100%. For any reason, I will Zillow your house. I want to see how much you spent on it. I want to see the last time it was sold. I want your square footage, on the whole thing, the rent estimate, all of it.
I love how
So
thorough you are.
I get it.
So let's start with our red flags. Drew's relationships. I I promise I'm not picking these types of I'm just picking stories that I find interesting. And the fact that there's a lot of marriages involved is just ancillary to that. Taylor, how many marriages do you think Drew had?
3,
Four.
4. Okay.
Almost five, actually.
Ooh. Okay.
He was engaged a fifth time. Predictably, he was crushing it on both ends of marriage and divorce. His first wife, Carol Brown, was his high school sweetheart. They married in 1974 and divorced once it came to light that Drew was cheating. They
Okay.
had 2 kids, one of whom, Stephen, is somewhat relevant later on in this story, so we can forget the other kids. Marriage number 2 was to Vicky Connolly. They stayed married for 10 years, and Vicky had reported domestic violence against Drew before.
Oh.
Later, once the facts of what we're going to be discussing later came to light, she alleges that Drew threatened to kill her and make it look like an accident.
Hmm.
They divorced, and their divorce was finalized in 1992.
Okay.
Marriage number 3 is where things take a darker turn, an escalation turn.
All right.
I think that's kind of what's going on here is like he's just slowly inching his way into being more and more abusive. There's like something about this in the story we told like 2 weeks ago around like how the older men get, the more they start becoming crazy. And I guess maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's an indication of this. So marriage number 3 is to Kathleen Salvo. They got married just a few months after the divorce from Vicky. So again, I would say that's a red flag, right?
Yeah, and it must have been really hard for Vicky to like accuse him of that if he's a cop, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know who you'd go to, like where you'd feel safe making that accusation.
Because we'll learn later on that the cop bro culture in this story comes out later on. So
Hmm
yeah, that had to be that's actually a really really good point. I didn't put it in here, but that's a good point. I'm gonna have to cut it out the fact that I'm saying points so many times.
I think, well, keep the part in where you tell me I did a good job.
I'll keep
That's
that
fine.
in.
Okay.
So I put down here that I don't care who you are. If someone just got out of an extremely long term and serious relationship, and it doesn't matter what they tell you, they are not ready to get married. I
Yeah.
just don't think that humans are wired like that. Right?
And like why? 'Cause we've talked about this before. Like You can date people, you can live together, whatever. You know, like marriage is
Yeah,
so much paperwork. Like,
I don't get why.
why do
Yeah,
that?
he just insisted on constantly marrying these women. And I don't.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? Like, why? Yeah, actually, again, another good point, Taylor. Why does someone just keep getting married over and over like this?
I don't know. I mean, I can't even imagine like having to move out of my house and like divide my stuff up again. That sounds exhausting. And to do that like 3 times, that sounds like that just doesn't make any sense. Like I feel like it has to be like we talked about with like Henry VIII and the Tudors and why you couldn't get divorced. It has to be just like I want to have legal control over you.
Did you hear that?
No, what was it?
Um, Matt Lane just texted me and it audibly sounded, so I need to mute that.
I didn't hear it at all.
Yeah, I don't totally. So we'll learn later on that Drew actually didn't have that problem of having to file paperwork,
No.
and yeah, he actually found another way around that.
Oh, I did. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, he's a creative type.
Oh
So
gosh.
in March of 2004, Kathleen died under suspicious circumstances.
Mm.
She was found in a bathtub, and her death was ruled an accidental drowning. Just keep cop bro in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where the shenanigans start. Taylor, do you remember any part of this case? Because I only remember it because it was part of like an investigation discovery thing, and I always turn that channel on when I have a chance.
I feel like the part I remember that is gonna come in the future is does it involve his daughter-in-law in some way?
It does not.
Doesn't? Okay, then I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the bathtub she was found in was dry and contained no water. Apparently, her cause of death was decided on by what's called a coroner's jury, which I've never heard of this before. I thought that when someone dies, they just go to a coroner and they do what they do to identify the cause of death. But in this
Right.
case, in some jurisdictions, and in this jurisdiction in particular, a jury, they are the ones who decide the cause of death. I suppose I didn't get super in the weeds on this, but I suppose what it is that somebody does like an investigation into like the body, and then they send
Hmm.
off the report to this group of 6 or 12, and they make a determination on what the cause of death was.
Wait, are they professionally able to make the distinction? Because it feels like science should be involved.
I will dive way deep into that in a second.
Okay. I'd like a scientist to think about my cause of death and not like
Really? You don't want Copro to do it?
no, I'd like an like a really good
Ah, you're
scientist.
gonna be disappointed then. So that's where things are. Kathleen is found in a dry bathtub, ruled an accidental death by drowning, and that's where things stand, and Drew just moves on. Okay.
Okay, okay, okay.
We're now on to wife number 4. Her name is Stacy Ann Kale. You're gonna keep finding patterns in my stories. Here's another red flag. At the time they married, Drew was 49. Guess how old Stacy was?
22.
19.
Oh no.
30 years
Oh my
difference.
God.
Like, what
That's
do you have in common with a 19-year-old when you're 49?
19 is too young to get married for most people anyway. Like in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. And they ended up having 2 kids. And she actually even adopted Kathleen's kids and raised them like they were her own. And by all accounts, Stacy was a very sweet woman and mother.
Hmm.
In late October of 2007, Stacy was reported missing by her sister Cassandra. Drew claims that Stacy this is so stupid. Drew claims that Stacy called him and said she's leaving him for another man, and that was it. That's
And
it.
then
Like,
hung up.
yeah, like I don't know what happened to Stacy. She just called me and said she's leaving me for somebody else.
And she left her kids there and all that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and that's all we know. Stacy is still missing and presumed dead. I've been researching this to figure out like has anything at all come out in the year. I mean, oh, I'm gonna do math again. 2007 to 2023. That's 6 plus 16
Was it
years, right?
16? Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Great job. Great job.
that's 16 years of absolutely nothing coming out about what happened to this woman.
Wow.
So she's presumed dead, obviously, and
Hmm.
Drew's not saying anything to anybody. We do have some details that seem relevant. So, a friend of Drew's told police that he and Drew bought three blue plastic barrels sometime around 2003 for a job they were contracted to
Mm-hmm.
do.
Mm-hmm.
This is totally 55-gallon blue drum Jeffrey Dahmer vibes, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great.
Drew's stepbrother,
Wait.
it's,
Okay,
yeah,
okay, keep going. I'm like, I thought when you said that, I'm like, oh, but he's a cop. So what does he mean? What a job he has to do? Like a home construction job, I guess. Whatever.
yeah, he was
Continue.
he was contracted out like as a side hustle to like do odd jobs around
Okay.
town. Yeah. Drew's stepbrother attempted suicide 2 days after helping Drew carry one of these containers, and he later said he feared it contained Stacy's body in it. So that's where things stand with that. But again, that's basically all we have at this point. I think the police may have done some covering up of things, but who really knows? It's worth
Mm-hmm.
noting that none of that slowed Drew down. A year after Stacy's disappearance, he got engaged to a 23-year-old woman named Christina. Yeah.
Now he's like 50 something.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did he meet her? At like a singles event? Like, where do you meet these people?
So I know with one of his earlier wives, they actually started a bar together while he was still a cop, and so I assume she ran it or something. Like, maybe he held on to it, so maybe like that's where I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know how you organically run into a 23-year-old when you're in your 50s. Dog parks? Maybe that? I don't know.
We'll talk about that this week on Dating Fars in Austin.
Lovely. Luckily, Christina's dad had a ton of sense and basically forced her to break things off and move out of Drew's house. So like it was basically like an ultimatum, like you're not doing this. Because at this point, I would assume that there was news stories popping up around this guy.
Yeah, totally. And weren't all the kids there? Were there a bunch of kids there?
Yeah, I actually don't know where the kids were because the first two kids would have been old enough to have moved on by then. They would have
Okay.
been way past 18 years old, but I don't know about the youngest two. So let's circle back to Kathleen's cause of death. After Stacy went missing, Kathleen's body was exhumed and a forensic examination was conducted. When I read this, Taylor, I thought back to our first episode and you pointing out the great fact that if you kill someone and you control what happens to their body, just cremate the body.
Yeah, for real. Why don't you
Yeah.
get rid of the evidence?
Yeah, be smart,
You did it.
people. The conclusions were that she had in fact died by drowning, but it wasn't an accident. There had been a struggle, and she was later placed in the bathtub because, of course, she was. They showed up to a drowning, and she's totally dry, and there's no water in the tub.
What did she drown in
We don't
then?
know. We don't know what
Okay.
happened,
Okay.
but we know that she had bruising on her back, her torso, her face. There was a gash on her scalp.
Oh my God.
At which point, that death was then classified as a homicide. In 2009, Drew is actually finally indicted for a murder. This murder in particular, Kathleen's.
Hmm.
Again, don't know anything about Stacy. This is just for Kathleen. But it's interesting that like that is what spiraled and prompted this to happen.
Yeah.
So because there was no direct evidence of what happened to Stacy, there's a curious legal procedure. Wait, what did I write here? Yeah, I got it.
This from direct from law school.
Yeah, right.
Is this whatever you have to say? Yeah.
In 2009, Drew was indicted for Kathleen's murder. Because there's no direct evidence of what happened to Stacy, there's a curious legal procedure thing that the prosecution started to do. So, generally speaking, hearsay evidence, i.e., someone told me this thing happened, isn't allowed except for certain circumstances because the whole point of American justice is you have a right to question your accuser. But if
Hmm.
the person's not there, you're just saying, here's what they said, you don't have that right.
Hmm.
There was such hearsay in this case where it should not have been allowed, and it wasn't. But the hearsay was something along the lines of Drew told me he killed his wives. Illinois, the state legislation really wanted this guy in jail, so they passed a law just for him called Drew's Law, which
Of course it did.
allows this kind of hearsay evidence to be admissible.
Wow.
Basically, it's like ghost testimony.
And they're saying like, fuck you, you're guilty also. And we made
Yeah,
this law after you because
yeah,
that's how much we believe that you're guilty.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, this law basically allows the hearsay of a dead witness as long as the prosecution can prove they were killed to prevent that testimony.
Cool.
Yeah. So also it's funny because I feel like every episode I say we're not a legal procedure show and then I go into legal procedure. So
Well, I mean, also, I mean, it's relevant. You did spend like $1 million to go to law school, so you got to use that money somewhere, and you'll use it here.
so paying off.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Lucky me. So ultimately, Drew was found guilty of Kathleen's death. The jurors did say that Drew's law testimony is basically what swayed them. So good on the state legislators for taking quick action.
Yeah.
He was ultimately sentenced to 38 years, which is where he's at. He's in jail right now. Apparently, he got his ass kicked in jail, like his first like couple of days or week there, and so they ended up having to transfer him somewhere different. I think the last I read, he was somewhere in Michigan or Indiana. I can't remember exactly where, but he's just bouncing around.
Right, because he's a cop who's in jail.
Yeah,
I
and
feel like that's not good.
yeah, and I mean, he kind of killed like almost kids. Like,
Yeah, no, he killed like young women, and like, why is he still think does he still say he's innocent?
oh yeah, he. See, I really didn't want to turn this super legal procedurally, but a large part of this case is everything that happened after he's convicted, which is just like the multiples of appeals that were run and everything else. And so, like,
Mhm.
that's the state that it's at right now. He's constantly appealing it. He's constantly losing appeal after appeal. And hopefully that's, I'm going to get into another piece. Like, he is definitely going to rot in jail forever.
Yeah,
So I wrote down a subcategory here called other gross weird shit.
nice.
And he's so gross. Like, he's such a disgusting human being. In 2009, so after he like tried to turn this into his 15 minutes of fame, the fact that his wife was dead. I don't know if you saw videos of this guy. You should look it up. You
I'm
should
gonna look him
YouTube
up.
him
Yeah,
because there's
I'm gonna look up his
videos of him
picture.
like he's just like smiling at the camera, like a huge grin. Like he is overjoyed that people are paying
Hmm.
attention to him in this way, that he's being photographed. Like he thinks that this is like that this makes him cool or more
Yes.
desirable or something. I don't know how to describe it. It's just he's too happy and I don't know if he understands the gravitas of what's going on or he just thinks, "Hey, I mean, he kind of committed the perfect crime, right? His first wife, they said it's accidental. The second one, we still don't know where her body is. So maybe he was just like
Hmm.
so happy with himself and pleased with himself. That's why he's grinning ear to ear in every one of these pictures. So are you looking this picture up?
Yeah, is that Rob Lowe that plays him in like the Lifetime
Yeah,
movie?
yeah, I think so.
Nice.
Yeah. That's
That's
like
what
pretty good
that's
casting.
pretty
Like,
good. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, obviously Rob Lowe is much more handsome, but they make him look less handsome. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. So one thing that he did that was so gross, we're gonna talk about his lawyer in a little bit. He and his lawyer went on a talk show, like a morning show, a radio morning show, with this guy who just kept making fun of Drew Peterson about how
Hmm.
like obviously guilty he was.
Hmm.
And his lawyer suggested that the host do a dating game segment with Drew where women can call in and who wants to win a date with Drew.
What?
Yeah.
And did they call in?
No, this radio host had enough sense to say that's in incredibly bad taste. We're definitely not going to do that.
I definitely read something today that already women are writing to that like the Idaho murderer guy and being like, I love him, he's perfect. Because people write to like convicts somehow.
Wait, who is that guy?
The guy who just killed all those like college kids in that place in
Oh my
Idaho.
god, that's
Like
so
already women
gross.
are like, what? Go to a bar, find a dude that hasn't killed someone.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's that hard.
Most people, your odds are better to find someone that hasn't killed someone.
I hope so. I think
Yeah.
so.
So another curiosity here, he's so stupid too. In 2015, so this is after he's convicted and he's in jail for 38 years. He tried to hire someone to kill the prosecutor in his trial.
It's
Think about that.
impossible to hire someone. You can't, no one is a contracted killer. There's
But,
never been one.
but think about that. Like, if he had done, like, assume he had done this and he gotten away with it, he's still in jail. They're not going to overturn a conviction because the prosecutor's dead.
Yeah,
It-
right. That's
So
not. Like, what's the end of that? Just to kill him because he's mad?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh my
And then
God.
so he did this in 2015. In 2016, he goes to trial for this. And this is the part that like I don't totally get. He got 40 years for this. Maybe because it's like a state government worker or something. Attempting to
Mm-hmm.
kill one of them might have carry more weight than
Actually
definitely
killing a
killing your
woman.
wife. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. I don't totally get that math, but yeah, he they tacked on another 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So his
What an idiot.
lawyer, this guy, he's such an idiot. Again, I'm drinking scotch because I'm so glad that I'm not this guy. His lawyer apparently says he knows exactly where Stacy is. Shit. So his lawyer apparently knows, or he says he knows where Stacy's body is. He knows he's been stated as saying he knows everything, but that communication is protected by attorney-client privilege because there's no harm to be done now. She's already dead, so there's no way that he could break that
Ew.
and disclose it. It's worth noting though that he actually lost his law license for like totally unrelated reasons to Drew Peterson.
I
So
don't
like
yeah, go ahead. I
I
don't
mean,
understand.
yeah. Well, so it doesn't matter that he lost his license later on. Like the communication that was had was done earlier than that, and so that's why it's
Totally.
protected. And in addition to that, he's actually under a court order, under a gag order, to not disclose anything. So if he does, he's basically gonna, yeah, he would probably be held in contempt of court at this point, and he could probably be sued by Drew Peterson. But who cares at this point?
But what
So
about Stacy's family? Like, don't they deserve to know where she is?
yeah, I
Aren't
mean
they
that's
the
just
victims?
yeah, yeah. But like, but in this case, you know, this supersedes that the attorney-client privilege.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Sucks.
I mentioned Steven, his son, earlier. So his son was actually a cop too in a different part of town. He was a cop for about 6 years when this started happening. He was fired for obstructing the investigation into his dad. So he wasn't doing it internally as part of that police force. He was in a different part of town. So that police force was
Hmm.
not investigating the crime. He apparently hid Drew's guns. There was three guns
Oh
that
God.
yeah, he went into the house when the police were going to execute a search warrant of the house and then took out the guns. In addition to that,
Hmm.
he accepted $250,000 from his dad. Do you
Oh
remember
my
we talked
God.
about this with the Murdoch family? How
Yeah, like moving the money around.
yeah, moving the money around because Drew was like, I'm definitely going to jail over
Yeah,
this, and
totally.
somebody can attach themselves this money. Like one of these families of these women that I married into, they could sue me for wrongful death, and this money just goes away because of that. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to
Hmm.
give my money to Steven, and Steven took it, and he was yeah, he was forced out of the police force as a result of it. Which
Oh,
you
that's
know,
good. I was gonna ask, is he still a cop? I hope not.
did I mention that when that jury, the coroner jury pool was put together, one of the members on that jury was one of Drew's close friends. He was on the police force. They worked together on the police force, and he's the one who told the rest of the jurors Drew would never do this. He would never kill his wife. I know him. He's a great guy. Again, cop bro coming out.
What the hell? What the hell is a coroner's jury? That makes no sense. I
I
want,
don't.
I want
It's a
12
weird
coroners.
curiosity.
I want like 12 doctors,
Yeah, yeah.
13 baker's dozen of doctors to be on that coroner's jury. I don't want the murderer's best friend who's a cop.
And that's the thing. It's like did nobody do research and understand like who they're putting on? Because think about that. If they had, so that actually probably would have saved Stacy's life, right? Because
Yeah,
if they had actually done a thorough investigation into Kathleen's death, then he probably would have gone to jail then over that, and there would be no
yeah,
Stacy Peterson to speak of.
right, exactly.
So
Ugh,
So yeah, that's where things are. So as of right now, again, I researched this. There is no updates on Stacy's whereabouts on her body. Nobody knows. All we know is that people saw this blue drum being loaded into Scott Drew's. I call him Scott. Again, like the overlap is just
exactly.
constant.
It was a Petersons murdering their wives period of American history.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where things are right now. He's in jail. He's presumably going to die in jail again, and totally tacked on about 78 years for
Wow.
what he did. And we're never going to get any sort of resolution or conclusion onto what happened to Stacey. In
What an
theory,
asshole.
yeah, yeah. When you saw his pictures, did he remind you of anyone?
No. Who does he remind you of? He looks like a cop.
He does look like a cop. It's not that it's a person that he reminds me of. It's more like the ongoing theme of the shitheads that I bring up. He reminded me of Chad, Vallow,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or Chad
Definitely.
Daybell. Yeah,
Chad Daybell, I can see that for sure. For sure.
like just beer gut, way too happy and confident in himself. Like I don't know.
A lot of
it-
commitment to this mustache.
he's a type.
Yeah. I just want to make it clear that he looks nothing like Rob Lowe. They made Rob Lowe look worse to play him
He
in a
looks.
movie.
He looks. No, yeah, he looks like a retired professional wrestler, like at 60 years old. Like he does not look good. They were so generous giving him Rob Lowe.
So generous.
That's like if George
Yes.
Clooney played me. It's like guys, like
Yeah. No.
you gotta do something here. But that's that's Drew.
That sucks. Those poor kids, those poor
They're
ladies.
kids,
Yeah.
19 and 23 years old. Like it's again, ladies, like pay attention to this stuff. Like if the guy's just
Yeah.
constantly getting married, if women come in and out of his life and disappear under circumstances that did not I don't so I'm trying to think to myself, I most of my friends at this age are married and none of them have I'm trying to think. I don't think any of my friends have spouses that died.
No. Mm-mm. I know someone whose, spouse died tragically, but it wasn't suspicious, you
Well,
know?
sorry.
Yeah.
Sure. Like if somebody, God forbid, dies in a car accident or whatever,
Yeah.
like I get that, but like, yeah, my fully able-bodied wife drowned in
Is
the
gone.
bathtub. Like
Yeah.
it's like that's like a weird. That's a next level. It's too close
Hmm.
to she was killed.
Yeah, totally. And like, I'm even like, well, the disappearing is like real bad.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, my last wife, she disappeared. Okay. Is she a magician? Like, what the fuck does that mean? Like that's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Like to me, it's like the age gap thing is crazy. The constantly marrying people over and over again. Again, like if somebody gets out of a 10-year marriage with like kids involved and like immediately is in another relationship and marries that, like nobody's wired like that. I would
Yeah.
say almost nobody is wired like that to actually do that.
I do have an idea for a dating app called Widow or Won't Ya? For people who are widowed in like their late 20s, early 30s, who like to no fault of their own really wanted to continue to be married, but like something terrible happened. So they're ready to be married because I know a lot of women in their like mid 30s who really want to be married, but they're not finding that men want to be that committed. But if you find someone who like wanted to be married but couldn't be because the person died and don't feel like they could match together, it's for not for widows to get with each other, it's for a widow to get with a single person.
Why wouldn't they just go on a regular? Because
Because
isn't
then
everybody on a regular dating app?
I mean, I don't know. I've never been in a dating app, but the idea is that like the widow is like really, really ready to be married because they were married, and then someone who is also ready to be married, they can find each other because sometimes I presume on a dating app you find someone who's like not that serious. Anyway, I'm gonna
Yeah,
workshop. I'm gonna workshop it.
you gotta
I'm
workshop a little
saying
bit.
widower, won't you?
I feel like well, the name is good, but I feel like the demographic is pretty niche, and I'm wondering who the
Is it
advertisers would be for that. Box wine sellers? Like I don't know
funeral
who.
homes? Yeah,
Huh?
funeral homes.
It's getting dark. You got dark.
All right, I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna work on it. I'll
Workshop
decide.
it a little bit.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
That's my story for the week.
Ooh, I hope that he's having a terrible time in jail.
I'm
And I
sure
hope
he's
that
having a
someone
terrible
tells
time.
someone where Cece is because her family deserves to know where her body is and give her a proper all the things.
It has to come out at some point. It just has to.
Hi everyone, thank you for listening. Next week we will revisit episode 6 part 2 where I talk about the origins and the story behind the Taj Mahal in India. If you want to listen to it now, you can always go back. Episode 6 is in its entirety in our archive, which just means it's lower down on the list. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts: Spotify, Pocket Casts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, I'm sure is a thing, and we're also on YouTube, so you can find us there.